It's 2024 and we're back. Another huge rugby year ahead and a lot's going to be happening here. Of course, the Springboks are still world champions. 2023 is probably going to go down as one of the best years for Springbok rugby ever. An absolutely colossal win at the Rugby World Cup, and well done to them as well. We're still basking in that glory, and it's hard not to. Over here, if you're watching from outside South Africa, it's summer, it's a great time, it's a great time of year. You don't really want to be spending it in offices and that, and I must admit, I'm struggling to come back to the whole work vibe, even though rugby hasn't stopped and I haven't really stopped working. But yeah, I thought let me go ahead and say 10 things you've got to watch out for, 10 things that are going to happen this year, 10 things you've got to look out for. One of these lists. I'm not a big one for these lists, but I thought, why not? These are a couple of things I'm going to be looking out for, and just to see where the rugby world goes this year. So yeah, have a watch and tell me what you think. Leave your comments below in the comment section, and yeah, we'll. Well, it's quite easy. Number one, there's quite a big event in Paris in the middle of this year, the Olympics, which means the Olympic Sevens is on. Of course, we've already seen some interesting thing. Ireland saying that one player from each province is going to be able to make their Irish squad. They're certainly taking it seriously. The Blitzboks are hoping to medal, but they've got a bit of a tougher task this time. And then we've got the world's best player, Antoine Dupont, who obviously wants to put the disappointment of the World Cup behind him and go and play for France in the Sevens World Cup, where he's missing the Six Nations because of that. So some big names going to be at the Paris Olympics. And just it's going to be interesting to see. Of course, the Blitzboks still haven't qualified. I think that's quite a thing. They got one last tournament in June in Monaco where they should be able to qualify. I think it's going to be a tough time for them, guys. I mean, they should be able. They've got Great Britain's probably their biggest rival there. But most of the time, most of the other sides they should be able to beat. But yeah, if they play with the inconsistency that we've seen them play on the circuit over the last year or so, it might be a very long time and we might miss out on the Olympics. Of course, Kenya's already qualified for the Olympics. They qualified in Zimbabwe, beating South Africa in that qualification tournament. The top four sides did qualify. South Africa finished outside those top four, so it's a big year. And the Olympics will take center stage. Watch Dark Horses Argentina, who won in Cape Town. They're definitely going to look like they're going to be contenders there. So that's the first thing, is the Sevens at the Olympics. A gold medal awaits somebody, an Olympic medal awaits somebody, and it's going to be interesting to see who it is. Of course, there'll be the normal guys, the Fiji, New Zealand, Samoa, we'll see them there. USA are dark horses for that as well. They haven't really performed over the last year, at the same sort of height. But the French with Antoine Dupont could be an interesting wild card there. On home soil, home crowd advantage. We saw how that helped them in France, and how it was an absolute superhuman effort in the 15s for the Springboks to win in that quarterfinal. But yeah, the Paris Olympics are going to be a huge one for France, and Antoine Dupont there as well. That's going to be interesting as well. So that's the first one, the Olympics. In the Seventh Circuit, we're going to have the first final in Madrid of the new Sevens without the E's. SVNS. I must admit, I'm still not quite convinced at that wording of it, but what I'd like to see as well is just maybe a bit more. The tournament seems a lot more streamlined now, but I still want to see how this finale goes down. I'm hoping that it's going to be a good one and it's going to do the circuit justice. Big Sevens fan, I've been to a number of tournaments over the years. But yeah, we're hoping for that one. So Sevens is the first one. That's number one to kick us off in 2022. Number two on the list is equity deals. There's going to be a lot of talk about equity deals coming through. Western Province have just completed theirs, or about to complete theirs. I'm not sure if the ink's dry yet. But the Stormers are going to definitely get a bit of over the next year, a bit of a buying spree, that some more cash they can go buy out. If you look at the quality of players they already have, if it just helps them keep some of their talent there in the long run, that will be much better as well. Of course, the big one over there is the equity deal with SA Rugby, the CBC. I know there's another interested party now, but this has been going on for about 3-4 years now already, these negotiations. At some point they're going to reach finality. We've been told over and over again it's very close to being done. Could 2024 be the year that SA Rugby gets that financial stability that they need, that gets that equity partner they need? And what does that do to international rugby? What the Springboks are a global brand. They're the world champions, double world champions. Could easily see them playing exhibition games in very strange places in the future if that deal comes through. Of course, if there's money to be made and the equity partners want it to happen, that's what will happen. So it's an interesting one to keep an eye on. Of course, those are very clandestine negotiations, but we do hear it is very close, and there might be a second party coming in with a better offer, but I think SA Rugby hopefully is close to finalising that deal, and it can only be good for SA Rugby if they do. Of course, back to Western Province. You want that deal to go through. You want the sale of Newlands to go through as well. There's a pretty big hole after the whole flight debacle. Zelt Marais and his cronies who sold off, basically gave away the stadium for loans and just got themselves into such a deep mess that province went into administration. Hopefully all that's sorted out. Hopefully there's an equity deal and they run professionally as a business. I don't think anybody can really argue that, and hopefully that's good for Western Province in the long term. Of course, the other equity deals, those that have already been done, are going to be interesting to see. Where does Jake White take the Bulls, and his Patrice Motsepe and Johan Rupert's shareholding there? What exactly do they do further? Who do they bring in? Who do they buy? And then, of course, how much patience have the American owners, Marco Mazzotti and his consortium, have in the Sharks deal? Because the Sharks have had an absolutely horrid start to the season. They look like they're starting to come right. They've given John Plumtree the leeway there. But how much, everyone's got patience comes to an end. If the results don't start coming, we might see some interesting changes there at the Sharks. First, I think probably playing personnel, but then after that, maybe coaching personnel as well. But if it comes right, then of course everybody's happy. So a lot to look out for on that front. Okay, number 3, of course, is the Springbok year. The Boks are world champions. We spoke a lot about over the last year about the epic rise to the number 1, defending their title and the Webb Ellis Trophy, and just what an awesome year it was for them. Some real good. A lot of critics, a lot of people who didn't like their success, but when you're world champions back to back, it's hard to argue against that. So what type of year are the Boks going to have? Well, they've got some tough tests. They've got 4 tests in South Africa, which will determine the outcome of the year. They've, of course, got many more tests than that. They're playing their first test against Portugal, which is going to be very good, and really looking forward to see that, and good for the rise of Portuguese rugby. So that's the first one. Well, that's not their first test. They opened with a 2-test series against Ireland. Of course, that's going to be a very interesting one. Ireland, of course, the only team to have beaten the Boks at the World Cup. And some real bragging rights there. And I think there's lots of motivation for both sides. Ireland in 2016 won their first test in South Africa ever. But they haven't won a series. They won a series in New Zealand last time out, and they want to add South Africa to that list. Andy Farrell, of course, got a great group of players, and I don't think the Irish fear South Africa having beaten them at the World Cup. But the South Africans, definitely the one team that beat them. They'll want to get one over them. So that's going to be an epic series. And then 2 tests against the All Blacks, the old enemy, the World Cup finalists. That's going to be epic. All those games are always epic. It's hard to argue against that. And then, of course, 2 tests in Australia against whatever Australia put out at that stage, whoever their coach is. That's the big mystery as well. Australia have had their own share of problems, obviously, with Eddie Jones leaving and to the turmoil internally. But they've got, whoever takes over there's got the Lions to look forward to, and the World Cup in 2027. So there's a lot to look forward to for Australian rugby if they get that right. And 2 tests against the world champions definitely going to be very interesting to watch over that side as well. Of course, Rassie Erasmus taking over as coach again. It's going to be interesting to see him without his sidekick, Jacques Nienaber. No doubt that there's a lot of IP that will be carried through, but there's some interesting changes. Felix Jones has gone to England. Jacques has gone off to Leinster. So it'd be interesting to see how that coaching team sort of manufactures their playing style, if it changes in any way, and what new players start coming through for the Springboks. I think there's a bunch of new guys coming through. I don't see too many changes for the Ireland tests, but I do see in the long term starting to bring through a lot of more players. And I think those tests against Portugal, we might see some of the fringe players that weren't involved in the World Cup come back into the squad. Or come new guys come into the squad, and that's going to be quite exciting to see as well. Of course, the next cycle starts now, so you have to look forward to that. So that's number 3. Getting old, I can't remember that. Of course, yes. With the number 4 would be what happens to the All Blacks. Ian Foster's gone. Razor's there. Scott Robertson. He's taking over. He's been an absolute revelation at the Crusaders. 7 straight titles with the Crusaders in Super Rugby. You can argue all you want about South Africa not being there, but 7 straight titles is an amazing feat. So he takes over, and I always remember a conversation I had with Heineke Meyer a long time ago, where he had just won the Super Rugby competition, and I remember a conversation with Heineke Meyer when he took over as Springbok coach after he had won Super Rugby and had a lot of success at that level. Not as much as obviously Scott Robertson, but then the one thing he did lament at that stage was the lack of game time that you see your players as an international coach, and the lack of time you have to work with them as opposed to franchise or provincial coaching. And I think that could make a massive difference as well to Scott Robertson. Of course, he's got unlimited talent there at the All Blacks. They are a great team, and they made the World Cup final against all expectations as well. So they're going to want to take that on. It's certainly going to add a new chapter to the entire rivalry and to the All Black legacy. And I think there's a lot of people who've been waiting for this for a while. The only thing, and that's why I contrasted maybe with Heineke Meyer, is that Heineke Meyer was set to get the job in 2008, and he didn't, and Peter de Villiers got it. And you almost felt when he got it in 2012, it was almost 4 years too late. Although he did make a World Cup semi-final, obviously the Japan thing will always hang over his head. You just hope that's maybe not the same problem for Scott Robertson, that he should have got it earlier. But he's certainly at the peak of his coaching career, and it's very hard to argue against that appointment. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what the All Blacks do this year. I'm sure the standards will be high, but will they be the super high standards that we saw in sort of the 2000s? That's the decade up to 2011 and 2015, where they won the World Cup back to back. That's a high bar to set, and a lot of expectation on Scott, so it'll be interesting to see that. Number 5 is the new competitions that are coming up. We're seeing a new Pacific Island Nations Cup, USA, Canada, and the Pacific Island nations. How they're going to be doing in that? What's that going to bring to rugby? We're seeing the introduction of the first rugby championship under 20s, which will be very interesting to watch as well. The 4 sides playing each other on the eve of the rugby championship games. So those are going to be quite interesting to watch, to see the under 20s, and I think it's going to add to that rivalry as well, and add to that spice. I think the Six Nations under 20s works quite well, and it's been a while since we've all wanted something like that to happen to the Southern Hemisphere, and we'll get it, and so we'll see how good that goes down. Of course, there's also talk of the Test Championship coming into being. That's been green-lighted. We'll find out this year who the 10 nations are. We obviously know who the top 8 are, who's going to be joining them. Will Fiji and Japan be the 9th and 10th games? What happens to Georgia, Portugal, Samoa, Tonga, all those fringe nations? Because it's at the moment it's being ring-fenced till 2030. Those are the plans. So what happens to those teams? How are they going to guarantee them sort of not to fall by the wayside and lose all the progress they've made? And I think rugby needs to have a look at that. Of course, that's the big thing, and so it doesn't go the way of cricket, where a couple of the elite nations basically rule everything. So it'll be interesting to watch those new competitions and where that goes and what happens to the Rugby Championship. There's also talk of a Club Rugby Test Championship or Club Rugby World Championship that's going to come. We're going to hear more talk about that in the coming months. And probably a European Cup or Investec Champions Cup against Super Rugby winner sort of game at some point. The big thing though is in all of these is global season, and if World Rugby can do something about that, Bill Beaumont, I think we'll devote another video at some point to World Rugby under Bill Beaumont. There's some very mixed feelings over there. Of course, there's also a World Cup in 2035 that's going to be put into place. There's going to be some teams, some countries vying for that. Interesting one South American bid there as well. Argentina, Uruguay, and Chile. That's going to be a quite interesting one. And then the Spain Portugal one's going to be quite interesting one as well. I'm all for rugby going to new territories, and I think we know that South Africa probably will never host the World Cup again. That's just the economic reality. And I think it also, if I have to say this, it also makes it quite justice that the Springboks won in France, given the way that vote for the 2023 World Cup was stolen and manipulated by Bernard Laporte and his crew, and we've obviously seen all the court cases and things that happened after that, so you just have to wonder how corrupt it was at the end of the day. To me, going on the newspaper reports, etc., and going from the information I had, there's no ways that South Africa should have lost that bid, but obviously some wheeling and dealing made it happen, and France had a wonderful World Cup. Got to give them that. They really hosted a great World Cup, but it's hard to see South Africa ever hosting a World Cup again, and that's a sad reality. And I mean, it just makes the Springboks win away from home even that much bigger. So yeah, a lot to look forward to there, a lot we're going to still talk about over the year, and it'll be interesting to see where that all leads. Number 6, we've spoken about the new competitions that are coming to play, but the old competitions are the ones that, when I say old, the established competitions, are ones that certainly are going to be a big talking point as well for the World Rugby, or the Rugby World, should I say, over the next couple of months. You've got to look at, can Rugby Championship be sustained like it is now? Not for South Africa, to be honest. You have players having to take off time in February and March just to make sure, because they missed the start of URC when it comes around, because they're playing in the Rugby Championship. That's not sustainable for the Springbok players. So what you'd want is for the competitions to start aligning, going back to the global season. The Six Nations, will it become more than the Six Nations? What happens to those fringe nations like Georgia and Romania and Portugal, Spain, all those ones coming through. And then at club level, as I said before, where there's some talk about a sort of a club championship being sort of muted as well. And where would they fit that in? There's already so much rugby on the calendar. Somehow you've got to streamline it. It's got to be less is more. I'm not sure how they do that right now. There's of course also the talk of some talk of an Anglo-Welsh league, which is quite interesting. With a lot of support there out of Wales, mainly because the Welsh teams aren't really doing well in URC and they in a bit of a financial mess. I understand the regional thing, that it's not far from England and it's, for fans, it's driving distance, but England's rugby's got its own problems, and if they lose another club in the coming year, which there's some talk of that, they would have lost 4 clubs in 2 years, and so they could absorb those Welsh clubs as such, but I'm not sure, just from, and this is just anecdotal, and there might be stuff going on behind the scenes that I don't know. If the Irish and Scottish and South African and Italian clubs really want to join in a sort of league, or want the Welsh to go, that's going to be an interesting debate. I can see there a lot of talk drumming up about it, and to be honest, the way the English league is going, and I know they've had some success in the Champions Cup in the recent times, but you could eventually see them merging with the URC more than other way around. If Wales do break away, it will be sad, but I'm not quite sure it's going to make their rugby stronger, to be very honest. I think there's a good debate there, but there are people who know more about the intricacies of Welsh rugby than me, and I'll leave it up to them to write about that. But just as an outsider, the URC has been a revelation as a league. It's, even though it's got its teething problems and the distances and things like that, it's really been great for South African rugby, and I think financially it's proving its point. The crowd figures are there, the broadcast figures are there. So I can't see that changing necessarily unless there's a better argument to be made. And that's the big question. Is there a better argument to be made? We'll have to keep an eye on it, but that's certainly going to be something we need to watch this season. Number 7. A while back, my podcast colleague Liam Del Carmen, if you haven't listened to the podcast, him and I do a podcast called To the Last Drop. It's about wine and rugby. Every week we have got great guests on and we chat. It's very light-hearted. We chat about rugby every week. It's on all major platforms. But him and I both the same week wrote a piece about the Bok All Black tours being reignited. And we both spoke to the same person, ironically. Where the story came through that there was talks between New Zealand and South Africa to have proper long tours again. 3 test series and 5 provincial games, an 8-game tour. They were looking to start it in the same year as the Lions tour. But obviously there's some logistics they've got to sort out about when they can exactly have these tours. But there's a deep desire from both countries to sort of get that going again. And I think there's some commercial viability in it as well. I mean, Springbok All Black tests are great. How that will fit into the current system, I don't know. We haven't seen it being denied anywhere. I know there was a bit of an unhappiness in Australia about the plan. Obviously, they feel a bit left out of the whole thing. But we're going to probably find out a bit more. And in the coming months, there's probably going to be some sort of announcement of how that will take place. There's a big desire to have it happen. And as someone who grew up on All Black Springbok tours, I'd want it to happen as well. So look out for that. It'll be interesting to see. Let's hope it goes through. Number 8 is law changes. We're seeing a lot of law changes in terms of tackling height, and how will that change the game? There's a lot being trialled in South Africa and a number of other places, and I know there was a lot of consternation about club rugby and amateur rugby having to sort of load to below the nipple, the height of the tackles. We're going to see how that's implemented, and there'll be, I think, a lot of teething problems there. There's, of course, a school of thought that the lower you go, the more susceptible you are to head injuries, and I'm not sure. We'll probably have to wait for the data to come back on that one, but there certainly is some debate around that whole thing and where we're going to go with that. And so that whole sort of tackle height law changes, and what other law changes are we going to see in this year? Because there's obviously, we've seen calls from people that don't like the bomb squad concept. They don't like the fact that the Boks played 7 forwards on their bench. We've seen all those sort of gripes, and I mean, between the Clive Woodwards and the Matt Williams of this world and the Warren Gatlins, who the other day said there was too much kicking, even though the stats show that there was probably less kicking at this World Cup than previous World Cups. So I don't know. People harp on about a lot of things. To me, if they want to change a couple of things, the caterpillar rucks is something that I absolutely detest, and the goal line dropout's another one. I don't see why an attacking team needs to be penalised if they get held up over the line. Surely they should get some sort of advantage on that. But that's the type of thing I'd like to see happen. But we're going to certainly see a lot about tackle law variations, and especially the tackle height variations that are going to be trialled. I expect a lot of debate about that this year. Number 9 sort of comes on to that as well, which is also sort of the same, almost the same thing, which sort of started the tackle height evaluation. What are we going to see in terms of the court cases between rugby players that are obviously suffering from dementia and the after effects of rugby? What are we going to see about that court case? Where is it going to go, and how will it affect rugby? I think we've gone through this point where we've probably got the ridiculous, where every sort of shot becomes a red card, whether it's intentional, and I'm on record quite clearly as saying no accidental head clash should be in a red card. Then there's all the red cards that sort of influence games. I think there's a big debate going on around that. We've seen that subside a little bit, although the World Cup final we saw 1 red card, and Sia Kolisi could have probably got a red as well. But I think we're starting to see a lot more common sense from referees in terms of that, and that's probably good. Although what it's really become now, which I don't really like, it's become a thing where fans in the stadium almost start baying for blood. They start, in the World Cup that was very apparent. Every time there was a headshot or they went up to the TMO, it became a huge thing about fans sort of trying to influence the referee with boos and sort of trying to make it bigger than it is. I think the bunker system probably worked pretty well. We need I think that's part of it. What we need to do is just that, and obviously also the social media abuse of referees and the abuse of referees. It all comes back to the same sort of thing to me. We need to get a better hold on how we handle the game on and off the field and on social media channels, and the head high shots. Whatever happens with that court case, whatever influence it has on rugby, we see new sort of scrum caps come out that apparently help as well. New sort of mouth guards that sort of indicate when a player's needs a head injury assessment. And I think a lot more common sense we'll probably see. But what you don't want to have is it gets to the ludicrous that it takes all the physicality out of the game. We don't want to see anybody suffer any after effects from rugby. You don't want to see people have that sort of thing where they get dementia and things like that and they struggle. But this is all a very, very emotional debate, and it's going to be interesting to see where that goes. And then my number 10, it's quite an easy one. Actually, it's probably the easiest one of all, because it's the one that's the unknown. Every rugby season delivers stuff to us that enthralls us, that makes us cheer, that makes us angry, that makes us sad. And who will those players be? Who will the coaches and the teams and the players be that sort of bring us those heights, remind us why we love rugby? For me, there's so much rugby going on at the moment that you live for those moments that you want to talk to your friends about, that you want to watch the replays about, the ones you want to see filled on social media. The did you see that moments, and those are the ones I'm looking forward to this year. Those moments that really just take your breath away, make you remember why you love this game and why you're passionate about this game. Hopefully we see a lot of those this year. Hopefully they overwhelm all the controversy. And then even more than that, what about the characters? We want to see more characters in rugby. We want to see rugby embrace itself. We want to see, not like the World Cup where everything got copyright striked by a team of attorneys from World Rugby. You want to see rugby thrive and live, and you want to see those characters shine in rugby. That's what I'm looking forward to this year. And I don't know who they are. They are obviously the same old suspects, but you want to see rugby grow. And I think that's the thing. The World Cup gave us some wonderful moments, but we can't wait 4 years for those moments. You also want to see, in my line of work, it's interesting to see what the headlines are going to be this year. What's going to take our focus? What's going to keep us busy? What's going to make us debate as well? And I think rugby suffers from a bit of a lack of debate. There's a lot of opinions, but there's a lack of quality debate in rugby as well. And hopefully on this channel I'll be able to lead some of that. Hopefully I'll be able to give my opinion a bit. I know I say there's a lot of opinions, but hopefully I'll be able to give some more fact-based videos to try and explain certain concepts, and that's what I'm hoping to do on this channel. But the unknown, the year ahead, is what excites me, that passion, that what makes us love rugby. Let's hope we see an overflow of that. Anyway, that's my 10. If you've made it to this part of the video, thank you for watching. Leave your comments down below and let me know what you think we should watch out for as well. And any suggestions for videos, I'll take them as well. But thank you for watching, and if you haven't subscribed, I've got to ask you, please do. Keep coming back and watching these videos. It's great to have you as a viewer. Anyway, thanks a lot. Happy New Year. If I haven't said it already, I think we're almost getting to the point where you can't say it anymore because it's almost too far past New Year's. But thank you for watching, and keep that passion alive. Cheers.